Okay, guys, it's Brandon again, and I had a little bit of free time this evening, so I thought that I would put together another video series for you guys while you are still practicing your staying at home and your social distancing. I hope that you guys had a lot of luck with the project that we did yesterday together, gradients, where we worked on combining our colors, blending colors together, real simple drawing designs. Today I'd like to work on a different style of art that you'll sometimes see that I've done out there. It's going to be kind of like a version of line and wash. Usually that's done with India ink markers and watercolor paints. But you can do it with markers or colored pencils. There's a lot of different things that you can do with it. Some that we'll kind of talk about during the video, some that maybe we can talk about another time if you really want to kind of explore the style of art. You'll notice the paper that I'm using this evening is quite a bit smaller than the paper that I was telling you about yesterday. You can still use any size paper that you want. I'm using a paper coming from a little small pad that I got at Hobby Lobby called a watercolor pad. It's still really thick, like the Bristol paper that I was telling you about yesterday. You can see some stuff that I was practicing on with some markers at some point in time. It's still really thick, but it's got a little texture to it, which will kind of, see if I can get that in the video. So when you're actually working with watercolor paints, that'll kind of soak in the paint. And with watercolor paints, you're kind of taking advantage of the paint kind of bleeding a little bit, especially in this technique. The big thing that you want to do is be real loose with your colors and kind of let the lines, the black line work that we do, kind of really shape the image for us. So your colors are kind of out of focus. Maybe they're not necessarily as in-depth as they are with some of the other styles of art that I work in. But this is a fun one. I'm using this paper today because sometimes I like to make postcards to send to friends of mine or to give to people at the hospital that maybe aren't feeling well when I go into work. I like to make little postcards sometimes. So I'm going to make a postcard or a drawing tonight with this line and wash technique. And I was looking for some inspiration, things to kind of cheer you up and, you know, kind of get you out of the dumps with everything that's going on. And as I was looking out the window, I noticed that Braden has a little birdhouse just out from where I do my art. And it actually has some bluebirds living in it. And they're kind of fun to watch. They were my grandpa's favorite birds, and so they mean a lot to me. But they're really neat to watch, and they kind of make you smile even when you don't even realize it. So I felt inspired to do something like that. You've probably seen some stuff that I've done with some cardinals and things like that before, but I've never drawn a bluebird before, so just hang with me. Few other supplies that you'll want to gather before we get started. You'll want a pencil. I always use, when I'm doing my drawings, a sketch pencil. It's a 6H, if you can see that. That just means that it has a really hard lead, so it makes really light lines and they're easy to erase, or they don't necessarily show up underneath your inks quite as much as like a regular #2 pencil. You can use a regular #2 pencil. Any pencil will do. Just make sure that you don't make your lines real dark or real heavy. We're just going to kind of do all that stuff real light, and then we'll move on to the ink parts. For the first step in the ink parts, I like to use just a regular click pen. Actually, my favorite is like one of those stick pens. Bic makes them. Lots of people make them. I like the Bic ones. They got a cap on them that you always lose, and then the ink pen dries out. But they're really good for sketching because they're a lot like drawing with a pencil. But they're real easy to work with. They let you do light lines and dark lines and things like that. So every good artist is able to make good art with whatever supplies are available to them. And I did a lot of art growing up with just regular pencils and regular ink pens. So I still like to use those quite a bit. Just like last night on the gradient picture, my two styles of brush pens. I always like to have them out and handy. Never know what, if I want to use the hard tip or the soft tip brush pen for a piece. Sometimes I use both. I just like to have them handy so that I don't have to dig through my art box. Again, like last night, white gel pen or white colored pencil or whiteout or whatever you might have used for your moon and stars. Always good to have that handy. Simple color palette tonight. For my Bluebird, I've got kind of 3 shades of blue that are all kind of closely related. Trying to get them in the light there for you. I don't know that I'll use necessarily all 3 of them, but I've got my light, my medium, and my dark tones, so I have them out and available if I need them. To go along with the blues, because bluebirds, at least the eastern bluebirds, have a red or orange or pink kind of belly to them. They've got a lot of white on them as well. So I've got 3 shades here. Again, a light tone, a mid-tone, and a dark tone, just so that I have them available if I need them. And then I also have just a couple of brown markers that I'll be using, and I'm just going to use 2 shades, kind of a light tone and a dark tone, just for like the shadow areas. Anytime you're doing shadows, just kind of keep in mind that a lot of times we think that shadows should be black, but they're not. Just like the shadows on this page, you know, this page is kind of a light brown, but you can see where the shadows are, and it's just kind of a darker brown. Same is true here, and really anywhere else. You know, the shadow on this page might at first kind of look kind of black, but it's actually kind of a bluish or purplish tint. So a lot of times when I'm using the markers, I will just take a shade darker than what I'm actually making the object, and then I will go with that darker color to kind of accent the shadows and stuff in there. That's really all the supplies that I've got out now. I might decide to, I probably will go ahead and get out a couple green markers, a light one and probably a dark one or a medium, maybe all 3. I'll grab those here in just a minute. While I'm grabbing those, if you want to kind of run around and grab the supplies that you need, you'll need some paper. You don't have to tape or mask anything off. I just masked this small page down because it kind of gets lost all over my drawing area. So I like to tape it to something larger to work on. Pencil, ballpoint pen, or a click pen, or a cap pen, your white gel pen or whiteout, or white colored pencil. If you've got brush tip markers or a fine tip Sharpie, those would be kind of handy to have. And then of course your colored markers or colored pencils. Again, Crayolas can work. If you've got artist markers, definitely use those. Or again, colored pencils, anything that you've got, we can make art with any of the supplies that we have. So run, grab your supplies, and I'll go get the rest of mine, and we'll get started. Okay, guys, we're back, and just to kind of give you a heads up, this is a little different than the project that we did last night. Last night we just basically added our colors onto the page and made a gradient by blending the different colors of markers that we use, kind of showing you how to do some kind of shaded areas and some highlighted areas. And then we silhouetted a tree in the foreground. Some of you guys put a swing like I had. Some of you guys had a tire swing I saw a few of. You guys put the benches in, and everything that I saw looked fantastic. This is going to be a little different though. We're actually going to start out by sketching a picture. So for those of you that really just like to draw, this will be a fun project for you. And we'll kind of keep our lines nice and simple. We're not going to go to any expert level classes right off. But we'll make a real cool picture here. And we're going to do it in my style. So my style, like I said yesterday, I really like to use smooth, bold, confident lines, and most of my work has pretty vibrant colors and pretty heavy black lines, and that's kind of what my work is identifiable as. There are certainly lots of different approaches to art. This is just the way that I like to do my pictures, so just kind of follow along with me. What we're going to start out with, just with the pencil on the page here, I know that I want to put kind of an interesting looking tree limb here in the front. So just a Simple curve with just nice smooth lines. Right underneath that, you got to put the bottom part of the branch on there. And I'm not going to do a whole lot right now with that branch. I don't want a lot of little branches or anything coming off of that, because my bird is going to sit somewhere in here on that branch. So I want that bird to get most of the attention. It's going to be kind of in the foreground. This branch will kind of be somewhere in what we call like the midground. We'll actually have a few branches behind it in the midground. And in the background, we're going to make kind of look like it's out of focus. So the bird is going to be like the camera was zoomed in on the bird, and then all the like tree limbs and the leaves and things like that in the background will look kind of out of focus with the way that we're doing our drawing. So the bird and this branch will kind of be in the front, and then the other limbs, maybe a couple of tree branches, maybe behind the bird, will be kind of in the midground, and then the background will of course be mostly just kind of a color effect. We'll probably just do like a gradient, like the greens or something like that, that I did grab during the little break there. So I've got my main branch here, and maybe just kind of in the background, I'll put a little branch that way. Again, make sure you're drawing real light, because maybe some of these branches won't be seen once we kind of get our bird drawn in there. In fact, I know like that one probably won't, but I want to know kind of where it's at in the picture. I don't want to get lost in the blank space of the piece of paper there. So just like we did on the trees yesterday, we'll kind of make a simple branch, maybe put a fork on it here and there. Just, you know, kind of fill a little bit of the space there. Don't work on doing a whole lot of detail, because again, we're going to kind of focus on this. We want to know that the branches are there, but we can't really tell much about the branches. There might be a couple of, you know, buds on them or something like that, since it's early spring, at least in my picture. And then we might be able to see some of that stuff, but we're not going to be able to tell as much detail about those branches as the branch that's zoomed in on the camera lens here. So we'll put some more detail in that in here in just a little bit. So now that we've kind of got kind of the layout here, just a few little branches there, I'm going to work on sketching the bird in, okay? Okay, so I think some people might be a little nervous about, you know, just putting the bird right there in the middle of the page. If so, that's fine. Just know we're not going to put a whole lot of detail in it, and we're really just doing this to kind of stretch our artistic abilities. So it's not, you know, a grade or anything like that. And everybody's art's going to be different. Everybody's picture is going to look different. But what makes them look the most cool is when we see everybody's art kind of together, where we've all made our own interpretation of the same kind of picture. So the real simple way to draw, from what I can tell, on a bluebird is to kind of make like a smooth line like that. And then, I don't know, it kind of looks like a teardrop to me. And that's kind of the body of the bird. And then up here for the head, we'll give kind of like a semicircle, or you could do a whole circle if you do it real light, so you can kind of see where you're at. And then I'm going to put my wing somewhere like that. And then I know that the tail is kind of that area. And then we'll do some detail with the brush tip marker, or your fine tip Sharpie, or your fine tip Crayola marker, or your whatever you're using, just to put a nice line in there. And then we know that the bird's eye is going to be kind of somewhere here, and so a good reference point there is kind of where the semicircle meets like the edge of the teardrop for the body of the bird. And then bluebirds kind of have just a little short pointy beak, and then we kind of bring it back kind of like that, and then maybe give a little bit of a bottom to it there. And then I know that bluebirds have kind of that red belly on them, so I'm going to just kind of, for my reference point, a real soft outline of where that's going to be. And so we've got an opportunity here to add maybe some layers to the feathers, since it's got its feathers kind of tucked. And we'll do that. and then maybe just a couple like that. Doesn't have to be super detailed. The cool thing about this is it's all going to be about the real bright colors and all that fun stuff. So we're not going to miss a whole lot of that. And then a couple of parallel lines, just like we did for the swings on the rope. And then just a couple real simple bird toes there. And then the other one maybe is kind of on the other side of the branch there. We can't see it real well. And so I think for the most part, that is all we need to do for the pencil sketch. And so while you guys are getting caught up on that, I'm going to grab a drink of water, and then I'll meet you guys back here and we'll get started on the inking process with our ballpoint pens. Got that handy. We're going to just kind of follow our guides here and just start really anywhere on the bird. I'm going to start kind of here on the feathers, and I'm just making nice, bold, confident lines. And so see how I get kind of a little bit of a feathering effect. And I'm not doing, you know, like little small sketchy lines. They're still bold, confident lines, but I'm going back and forth kind of over, and that's allowing me to get some cool effects there. And we'll run that feather back, and maybe that one. And then the rest of them are just kind of hidden in there. And then a couple little loops there like that. And then kind of follow. And so what's neat when you're looking at your pictures through the different phases, you make a lot of different decisions than maybe what you originally thought that you would. You can see that my pencil lines are different than my ink lines, and that's okay. My pencil lines are kind of my rough draft, kind of to give me the idea of where that bird was on that blank piece of paper. And now that I kind of know where he is, I might change some of my line work around to make it fit or flow better for the way that I'm drawing. So I'm going to start bringing my lines back for his head, and I'm going to hope that my hand doesn't get too much in your way so that you can see what I'm doing. Nothing real dramatic there, just kind of a pretty smooth line there. If you don't make a real smooth line, I didn't make a real smooth line, that's okay. The markers and all the beautiful colors are going to kind of cover up for us. So I'm going to kind of hint at where my bird's eye is so that I don't lose that. And then just a couple lines there above where I know that the beak's going to go. And then I'll bring that line in just like that. He kind of looks like he's grinning now, doesn't he? He might be up to something. Maybe he's just happy to be able to enjoy being outside. We had lots of sunlight today. That was kind of a nice change. Coming down here to the tail, I'm going to bring that down to kind of more of a point than I did in my original drawing. And then bring that one in, and then point for that side as well. All right. And then instead of having just that line that I drew to rough in where my pink chest on the bird goes, I'll just do a little, kind of little hatch lines there. And that'll kind of give me a guide on where to put my colors whenever it comes to that. I'll go ahead and draw my little bird foot. Again, don't waste a lot of time on much detail. Not in this area anyway, because it's not going to matter. You know, you're not going to see a lot of that. So it's fine to put a lot of detail in your work, but you'll learn that, you know, just make good use of your detail. Don't put a lot of detail into something that you'll never be able to appreciate, maybe from a distance, or even once you get the color on, then you can't see it anymore. And then you put all that work into it, and then you can't even see it. So be real efficient, or make all of the lines that you put on there count. Don't make any unnecessary work for yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and start sketching in my tree limb here. Again, just bold, smooth, confident lines. And again, it's okay to have little stray lines. They just kind of add to the texture. You know, no tree limbs real smooth or anything. So if you get those lines, that's okay. It just kind of makes it look like a tree limb. That being said, let's go ahead and put a couple little squiggly lines in, kind of like this. Maybe a couple parallel lines like that. Like that. This is actually kind of coming down here. I'll show you another technique. An art style called continuous line. It gets its name because it is a continuous line. You try to do it without picking your pen up. And you kind of get these kind of cool little effects here. And then maybe I like to do some of these like little spots and dots and things like that. They help give you some depth, some interesting little features. Might even have a couple of them kind of coming off the limb. Maybe they're little pieces of moss or lichens that are growing on the limb that are kind of flaking off or whatever the case may be. Don't spend a lot of time on them, but just give you something little interesting, little details to make it stand out. All right, now that we got our foreground kind of drawn in, and I do this kind of backwards from how I do a lot of my other artwork, where I start in the background and come to the foreground. When I'm sketching this kind of stuff in, I kind of like to put my detail stuff kind of in the front. There are different artists that might do it a different way. I just like to do it this way because I'm just going to, here in the midground, all those little tree limbs that we kind of sketched in earlier, we'll just draw a few little stray ones, maybe some plant buds. Couple plant buds on that one too. Again, you can kind of just do what you want with it, kind of make it interesting and exciting, however you want to draw it. I like for my little tree limbs out there to be real thin. I think about those bluebirds, you know, they're real small, dainty birds, and they probably like to find some of those little smaller limbs where maybe some of the bigger guys don't go. And a couple of those little dots here and there. All right, and we didn't pencil this in, but maybe we'll do a leaf kind of coming in up here in this corner of the picture. And just real simple, easy shapes, just curvy line on top and a smooth line on bottom, thin one, and then just kind of alternate them, just kind of fill in the space there. Okay, so let's take a break there and I'll get set up with my next set of supplies. Okay, so the next step that I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and move on to colors, but I'm going to work on the background first, and then we'll do the bird and the tree limb here in the front after that. I'm going to work with kind of my lighter colors. What I'm using here is a chartreuse green or a light green in some of the kits that maybe you guys have. And I'm going to be real loose, like I said, with the colors. I'm not, again, another good reason for the masking tape here is it's okay to get outside the lines because the masking tape will protect what's underneath it. But I'm going to take that light green color, and I don't want to be real crazy with it, but see how I'm not filling in exactly against the tree limb there. And it's okay if I go over the tree limb, because the tree limbs are actually going to be a darker color than they are, or than the green is. Just kind of filling in, you know, some of the background. I don't know what all is in the background behind the bird. You know, it could be, you know, maybe there's a lake back there, or, you know, just a forest or a park. Maybe there's a playground. It can really be anything that you imagine it to be. In my case, there's just going to be some tree limbs that are out of focus, and see how some of the ink runs. That's why I'm doing my colors first, because if I use my brush pens and then try to put the colors down, it will smear all the colors, and then, or the black will smear into the colors, and it'll get kind of muddy and messy on me, and I don't want to do that. It's okay up here because we're going to do some more finish work here in a little bit. So now that I've got kind of like my base light green color there to kind of highlight all those trees that I don't necessarily see, but they're still in the photograph, so to speak, or the picture of this bluebird sitting out there on that tree limb. And so one of the things we talked about with the gradient on our last project is you can use the same color marker or color pencil to kind of add more colors than you realize. It's not just one color, but by going over some of the spots after it's already dried, you know, it kind of adds a little bit of darkness or intensity to the color there. So we'll do that. And I'm going to move on to my medium green color, which I think is this one. And I'm going to go ahead and darken in the leaves. And I'm just filling them in completely for right now. I'm just using the medium green, I think, and I hope. No big deal if it's not. I can always just get a darker green out to add the shadows and stuff to that. And so now I've got kind of the leaves there. I know that there's probably some leaves out here somewhere that I can't really see real well. So just kind of being real loose again with the color, just adding a little bit of that medium green, just kind of here and there, over the top of that light green, kind of like that. So it's adding a little interesting kind of effects to the, you know, there's different shadows on the different leaves and different kinds of leaves and things like that. Switching over to the dark green here. Let's just kind of see what it does. Okay, so just kind of hitting along the edge there of those leaves, kind of like that. And this one, these kind of markers I have a bullet tip on one side, and then on the other side, they have a chisel tip with all kinds of different little angles on there and stuff. I use that mostly to kind of block in large areas of color, but there's a lot of different uses for them. But, you know, something simple like this, and just hitting a couple areas there with the darker green color. Okay, now that I've got kind of my very far background colors kind of mostly roughed in, I might actually even bring in a yellow marker here toward the end and fill in some of these white spots, just to really let some of the kind of the sunlight in my picture kind of come through some of the leaves and stuff like that. We'll kind of see how this picture goes. We just kind of do what the picture tells us to do. So we're just going to kind of follow it. I'm switching now to my light brown, because that's kind of the color that I want my mid-ground limbs to be. And I'm just kind of following kind of loosely along. If you get out of the lines a little bit, that's okay. They're not really in focus. They're kind of blurry to the camera. So, and I'll even make the buds they're not open yet, so they still got a little bit of the greens and browns and things like that in them. Maybe hit some of these guys too with that. And my brown is running out of ink. That's all right. If you draw as much as I do, you go through quite a bit of art supplies. I try to make it a habit to draw something every day. That's really the only way you can get better at anything, is to practice with it. And I know that's probably the same thing that mom and dad and your teachers and coaches all say, but it really is true. I try to draw a little bit every day, and I still learn all the time. And actually, a lot of the stuff that I know about art, I've learned just by watching videos kind of like this. I find artists that I like who have a style that I'd like to kind of be like, and then I try to emulate that. I follow along with what they're doing. And I do that with a lot of different artists, and then eventually your own style kind of comes out of that, where maybe you take this thing from one artist and you learn how to do this thing from another artist and still get something else from a third artist, and kind of combine it all together for what works for you. And that kind of helps you make your own style. But you can't do that if you're not practicing all the time. So I do encourage every day that you have an opportunity to spend even just a little bit of time drawing. That's all that I did to kind of be able to do what I'm able to do with art. And it's worked out pretty okay for me. So I'm going to take the same light brown and just a nice, smooth, confident stroke there across the top. And then I'll kind of skip a little bit of an area there and go kind of like that across the bottom. So we got kind of like a little highlight edge there, and we'll probably go ahead and fill that back in here in a little bit, but we're going to take advantage of the fact that when these markers dry and you put down another coat, it'll actually be darker than the first coat that you put down. So you might be able to see on your video, kind of following along underneath there. That's kind of darker than like that area that was originally white. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and use the dark brown too while I'm at it. So I know that on my picture, the light's kind of behind the bird, and I'll say kind of more directed over there. So my shadow is going to kind of come down this way, kind of from the bird. So I'm just going to, nothing real definite. You know, I'm not necessarily trying to draw the bird upside down as a shadow on the branch. I'm just kind of filling in a dark area that would kind of be with the bird in between the light and this part of the branch. And then maybe just kind of a line like that, kind of here and there, because we are looking at the back side of this branch, or the front side to us, but the side away from the sun. And then we'll go ahead and at the end kind of do some highlights on it to kind of bring it kind of back to life. We've kind of toned it down quite a bit, so we'll lighten it up with some highlights. I'm going to take a pause here, and then when we come back, we'll start actually putting the colors on our bird. Okay, time to start putting some colors on the bird. I've got my lightest blue in my hand, and what I'm going to actually do, since I know that the light is coming from the other side of the bird there, I'm just going to kind of highlight kind of that top outer edge with the lightest color blue that I have, and I'm just doing that real loose. If you get out of the lines again, that's fine. Okay, and put some blue in here around his eye, kind of like that. So I'll move on to kind of my darker middle color. And see, I'm putting a shadow in, kind of right underneath where his wing goes over his tucked tail wing there. And then that side, I'll make kind of dark. Maybe the leading edge of the wing there, and then along here. Again, I don't want to get all the way out to the edge because I know that's kind of where the highlight is, right? So kind of fill in a little bit here around his eye, down here around his beak. There we go. You can do more or less highlights and lowlights than I've done. Again, nobody's art's exactly the same. That's what makes it fun. And I've got, it's a darker blue, but it's kind of a brighter blue. It's kind of a less muted tone, and I'm not going to use a whole lot of it. But maybe just at the wingtips here a little bit. I'm going to go back to my lightest blue. Just kind of use it to kind of blend some of those colors that I put down, the light blue and the medium blue and the dark blue. Just kind of swirl them in. Kind of like that. And then we're going to go ahead and do kind of the lighter area, or the lighter part of the pink area. And just little confident little quick strokes there. And basically we're just kind of simulating the effect that maybe the feathers would have, right? They're not going to be, you know, super smooth or continuous or anything like that. So no reason that our picture itself has to either. And just kind of mixing in a couple of shades there, and maybe go in with the dark one too. And I'll say that maybe this area has a little shadow to it. So I'm going to go back to my real light blue and just do, you know, maybe a little touch of real light blue kind of along the bottom there. And then I'm going to go with my dark brown color that I used for the shadows and stuff. Come in here. On the beak like that, and we'll leave the eye for now. So go ahead and get ready to get out your fine point black marker, whether that's a fine point Crayola or a Sharpie or a brush tip pen or whatever you've got, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of finish this out and make it look like a Brandon Warren style art. Okay, for me this is kind of the part of the art that really makes it kind of pop. This is the heavy black outlines that I like to do in a lot of my drawings. We've already got all of our bright colors here and they're all kind of loose. So we're going to kind of bring back some of the finer details with the lines. And we're going to do those with, you know, heavy black lines and even some not so heavy black lines. So for starters, I'm just going to go back kind of up here to the top. And I'm going to try to make one continuous long black line to about there. And then kind of starting in there, these are just going to be little short strokes. Coming down in here. And then maybe kind of the little details there. And right now, it kind of just looks like I'm just outlining the bird kind of with a black outline. fill his eye in. And we'll hit that with a little highlight here in a minute and kind of make a little reflection in his eye. And then kind of the same thing with my tree limb here in the foreground. I'm going to put a heavier black line there. And then maybe a couple little lines like that here and there. Some can be long, some can be short. Kind of just helping fill in some spaces there. Some interesting lines to look at. They don't even all have to go the same direction. I wouldn't do a whole bunch of them because it can make your picture kind of busy, but I don't know, they kind of look like little stems and things like that. And kind of a couple little more dots here and there. And then we can come in here and, you know, just add little details. Kind of give him some little definitions to his feathers. Okay, so I think we'll move on to the white highlight pen here, and we'll see you guys here in just a minute. So I've got my white gel pen. Again, you can use whiteout or a colored pencil. If you use a whiteout pen, be real careful. They're usually a little broader than like a white gel pen would be. And I'm just gonna not use a lot of it, but I'm just gonna kind of highlight along the back of the bird and give him a couple little spots there in his eye, maybe across the tip of his beak, a little bit in there. Another cool thing with like the white gel pen is I can put like a little scribble like that and use my finger and smear it. And it kind of gives a nice little highlight without making it look overly drawn. And then right here on the tree branch, we'll say even some of this part of it is picking up light. And I've got this on the inside of the black line that I drew. Maybe some of these guys here can have some white spots in it too. Maybe along the edge of the leaves. Get some sunlight coming through. And then I'm going to grab my yellow marker, just kind of a bright yellow. So it's bright, so I want to be kind of careful with it, but maybe just kind of hit some areas here. And it'll actually blend with my greens if I use it just kind of subtle enough. But we'll say it's kind of like some sunlight coming through some of the leaves that maybe are around the bird there. Okay, so I am going to call this one done, and I'm going to go ahead and put my little design somewhere out here. Again, I just use this design because I don't like for my name or the person who did the art take away from the art, so I don't put my name huge on there. I just use a little design. That's the way I do it. Different artists kind of do different things. That's kind of what works for me. I've been doing that for a while now. Okay. I decided those leaves should be a little bit more in the foreground, so I highlighted them. I don't spend a lot of time doing a lot of detail on the stuff that's in the midground or the background, just the stuff in the foreground. I really want to draw people's attention to that. Makes the bird look like it's a lot more in focus, than the stuff around it. And I'm going to go ahead and peel my masking tape off now and kind of see what it looks like. Kind of looks like my masking tape peels off some of my paper. That's okay. Kind of makes it look like an old-fashioned postcard or like an old stamp or something like that. So send me some pictures of what you guys did, and I look forward to hearing from you guys soon, and maybe we'll come up with some more videos in the next couple days.